All right, I would like to call the April 1st, 2024 meeting of the Town of Cicero Zoning Board of Appeals to order. Ms. Robeson, please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia?
Here.
Mr. Daniel?
Here.
Mr. Bick?
Here.
Mr. Mays?
Here.
Mr. Stanton?
Here. Please take note of the fire exits located in the front and the rear of this room. At this time, please silence all cell phones and pagers. Tonight's meeting is being streamed on YouTube. It is also being recorded. At this time, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Has everyone read the minutes of the March 4th, 2024 meeting?
Yes.
Are there any corrections?
I'll make a motion. We approve the March 4th, 2024 meeting minutes.
By Mr. Rabia, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. By Mr. Daniels, please call the roll when you're ready.
Mr. Rabia?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Bick?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Mays?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes to the motion. The Cicero Town Board acknowledges the importance of full public participation at all meetings, and therefore we urge all who wish to address those in attendance to please come to the microphone located in the front of the room. At this time, I will make a motion that all actions taken tonight are type 2 actions and have a negative that is no impact on the environment unless otherwise indicated. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Bick. When you're ready, Ms. Robeson, please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Bick?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Mays?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes to the motion. I will briefly review the process for tonight's meeting for the benefit of those present that have never been before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Each applicant will have an opportunity to describe their project. The board will then ask questions about the project. I will then open a public hearing where people will be able to speak for or against the proposed variance. The applicant will then be given an opportunity to respond to the public input and provide additional information. Board members will be allowed to ask follow-on questions. The board will openly discuss amongst ourselves the 5 factors that contribute to the final decision. Please note that the board does not have a pre-agenda meeting, so there is no prior discussion of cases outside of this meeting. And finally, a motion will be made either approving or denying the requested variance, seconded and voted upon. So our first case tonight is a continuation of an application for a property on 7879 Northern Boulevard. The owner is Access CNY. We do want to make note that we did receive the Onondaga County Planning Board decision of no position with comments. Those comments have been addressed by the applicant, and I will be asking them to summarize them when they come up now, hopefully. Thanks.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Alex from last time, and I'm here with Matt with Access CNY and Vince from VIP Structures. And as you mentioned, it's our second appearance with you. Important to note, we've amended our request, which I'm sure you saw. It's now 30 feet, and that 30 feet is coming from that garage front point, which we had discussed, and those rooms and space to the upper right on the plan is actually more like 9 feet back, 9 additional feet, right? So that's 34, I believe, is that request. So we listened to you guys and went back to the drawing board, did some pretty significant modification to the layout of the building in order to make that happen, updated the play area, a little bit of storm work, just kind of reworked the site in order to make those amendments that hopefully is agreeable to everybody.
Christian, would you mind pulling up the plan for us? While you're up here, would you be able to address the comments from the Onondaga County Planning Board also?
Yes, I regrettably did not bring that set of comments in front of me.
Okay, so the first was coordinating with the Onondaga County. Oh, thank you for providing that.
That's okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. So the first one is related to sanitary sewer. And I think at the time it was shown maybe that we were connecting, but we are now addressing that with the septic unit, which you can't see. It's in this lower area that's being developed on the site. We're almost done with that design. Everything's good. We're avoiding buffers, avoiding property lines. There's an easement back there. Everything fits nice and tightly, and it's just being pumped through. So the force main. So that's how we're addressing sanitary. That's going to go off to obviously the health department approval. Everyone's going to sign off that needs to. For number 2, which one is that one? Thomas Road plans. Oh, yeah. So we already spoke to the Onondaga County Transportation Department. And they were the ones that helped us select this driveway location. We sent him quite a few options. I went back and forth with James Fenskin, and this is his preferred location as well. There's a hydrant right here. That's how we're accessing that meets the minimum the minimum requirement to get a hose in. It's far enough from this intersection. And that's gotten a preliminary approval. And of course, we'll go through the full approval as we're working through the rest of the process.
And you got through that without needing a traffic signal or anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Next one, wetland buffer and wetlands. We, as I think in our response, we have fully avoided, I think I mentioned that at other meeting, we're not even going anywhere into the buffer itself. We're practicing complete avoidance of anything wetland buffer, and that's our approach. We did have wetland study done to show where those are in fall of 2023. So that's been our approach to address those concerns. I think the last item is related to that transitional area with we have that split zoning on this parcel. It falls right here. Again, you can't see the full thing, but it comes right here. Most of our site is in this commercial area. And as I think we've kind of provided in our response, we see that as an asset. And this is kind of a blend of those two things. This is, commercial and residential in use. We're making sure that it fits aesthetically with the environment around it. As I think you'll see in the renderings, we really chose residential materials for the facility to make it blend in. But any of the concerns, we have quite a large buffer through here we're not disturbing, and we don't think that's going to be an issue at all with this potential traffic, I think, that came up. And so, I think it's going to be both a benefit to have residential and commercial around it, I guess, is our.
Good. Christian, would you mind going back to the rendering for us, please? What other questions, comments?
I thought they did a nice job addressing the concerns we had last month. So I'm pleased at how the layout looks, and thank you guys for spending time with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I can echo that also. Nothing else at this point?
Nope.
Okay, so as you all hopefully recall, we left the public hearing open. So at this point, I am going to ask if anyone would like to speak for this, or if anyone would like to speak against this. Okay, so at this time, I will close the public hearing. Does the board have any other questions? Okay. With that, I will make a motion for access CNY, but before that, I will cover the 5 factors that we need to consider before granting such a variance. The first being whether an undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties would be created. My answer to that is no. My reasoning behind that is that the property is in a transition area between residential and commercial and agricultural, and currently the land is undeveloped.
I agree.
Mr. Daniel,
Agree.
Mr. Beck,
Agree.
Mr. Mays,
I agree.
Mr. Stanton.
Of course, I agree. Sorry. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. My answer to that is a qualified yes. There could be some reconfiguration or using alternate types of stormwater facilities. However, a lot of that is going to be cost prohibitive on this site.
Mr. Rabia,
I agree. I think it's a qualified yes as well. I think, the applicant showed, a lot of willingness to work with the concerns that we had to hit some of our primary concerns and, I qualified yes.
Mr. Daniel,
I agree.
Mr. Beck,
Yep, qualified yes as well. They did go out of their way to modify their plans to meet some of our requests. And that's very much appreciated.
Mr. Mays,
I agree as well.
Whether the requested area variance is substantial. My answer to that is yes. We're requesting a 30-foot front yard right now where 50 feet is required. That 20-foot variance is about 40% and is substantial.
Mr. Rabia,
Agree.
Mr. Daniel,
Agree.
Mr. Beck,
Agree.
Mr. Mays,
I agree.
Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. My answer to that is no. The reasoning being that, again, we are in a transition area between residential and commercial agricultural, and currently the land is undeveloped, and do need to point out that the applicant went through some efforts to minimize their variance and their impact on the surrounding community.
Mr. Rabia,
I don't know. I think the answer is no, but I'm gonna let the professional deal with stormwater and all that stuff, but I think it's a no.
Mr. Daniel,
I agree.
Mr. Beck,
Agree.
Mr. Mays,
I agree.
Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, the answer to that is almost always yes, and in this case, it is too. The applicant is choosing to build within the required front yard, but it should be noted this is not necessarily a reason to deny the variance.
Mr. Rabia,
I agree.
Mr. Daniel,
Agree.
Mr. Beck,
Agree.
Mr. Mays.
I agree.
All right. So with that, I will make a motion on behalf of Access CNY for variance to allow the construction of a proposed 9,000 square foot healthcare facility that has a front yard building setback of 30 feet, where a minimum distance of 50 feet is required. And that is based on sorry, I'm pulling up the drawing again.
325.
Thank you. That is based on drawings, I believe it's revision C dated 3/25/2024 of a layout plan sheet number 3.0. And that is the end of my motion.
Second.
When you're ready, please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia,
Yes, to the motion.
Mr. Daniel,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Beck,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Mays.
Yes to the motion.
Yes to the motion. Motion carried. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our second case tonight is an application for a property on 8504 Tender Trail. The owner is Peter Zook. Am I getting that pronounced correctly?
I lost some of my hearing, so I'm not hearing too much
Okay.
back there.
Well, if you can't hear me at any point, I have similar issues, so just let me know and I'll do my best to speak up.
I'm Peter Zook. I lived at 8504 Tender Trail. As you can see, I'd like to put a 15 by 24 deck on the back of the house. I've got to go 15 foot because I got a bay window and a roof overhang in order to get maybe a 12-foot deck, usable deck. All right, I narrowed it down to 12 foot as soon as possible when I got past the bay window and the roof line to mitigate the setback. So I'm actually asking for just a tad over 8 foot on the 15 foot, and then narrows down to, I think it's 5 foot for the 12 foot. My front porch is facing northeast. All right, it's a 5 foot North Standard deck. All right. I moved to Florida for 8 years. I'm originally from up here. All right. And in the process, I ended up with skin cancer. So I decided to come back home again. And, to friends, family, etc. All right. Now my backyard faces northeast. So if I put a deck on the back, I'm basically shaded most of the day, so I'm not in the sun, which I'm not supposed to be. All right. If the doctors don't holler at me, my wife will. So I'm usually during the summer wearing a wide brim hat to keep the sun off. The back of my house, if I go out the back door and look to the left or right, there is no houses there. I set back, probably 5 to 6 foot beyond any of my neighbors. In fact, my neighbor to the left has got a patio, flat patio, and I don't even see that. All right. The only thing I see on the left-hand side that sits about 50 foot beyond my house, all right, 2 doors down, there's a shed. There's basically in the tree line. That's all I see there. All right. Looking to the right side, my immediate neighbor has got a shed that's probably 20 foot beyond past my house. All right. So there's no building, no structures, no nothing. Very nice, quiet neighborhood. I love the neighborhood. Wife loves it. The only thing I'd like to do is be able to utilize my backyard, by having a deck. As far as environmental, I wouldn't, be the drainage or anything else. It wouldn't be anything would be affected by that, only because it's a deck. It's not an addition. If it was an addition, you'd probably have more runoff farther back than a deck would be. All right. Let's see. Now there's one alleged difficulty self-created. All right. I guess it is self-created if I want to put the deck on. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a problem. So I didn't understand that part, but
That we usually, like I said in the past, in the other application, usually that's always a yes. But that, what I usually say is that that's always a yes, because these usually are self-created just by definition. But that's not a reason to deny the variance. So you'll hear us talk a little bit about that.
so it would not affect any environmental, believe me. In fact, right beyond course, I owned lot 221 and 221A also. As you can see, the deeper that the drainage goes before it gets to the wetland, I am probably a lot higher than anything to my left. As you go to my left, the ground actually tapers down where 4 houses down or whatever, every time it rains, their backyard is flooded, which, you know, that's their problem, not mine.
Right.
So, but, no, you know, I wouldn't mess with my neighbors at all as far as, they're great neighbors. I'm not going to do anything to upset them or anything else.
Okay,
I
understood.
just want to be able to utilize my property, that's all.
And Steve, just for clarification, the last case, there was a 100-foot wetland boundary. This one, I believe, is a federal wetland, so that does not apply.
That's
here.
correct.
Okay, just wanted to clear that up in case there were any questions.
Can you hear them up there? Okay.
Anything?
No, I think he clarified that they own 221A as well. That's, I think, important to know.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I looked at it. I mean, it looks relatively benign. So.
I was curious about the bump out in the deck, but you addressed that as well.
All right. So at this time, I will open the public hearing. Would anyone speak for this? Would anyone speak against this? At this time, I will close the public hearing. If the board has no further questions, would someone like to review the 5 factors?
I'll tackle if some of you guys want to.
All right.
Whether or
They gave you too many papers there, but.
no, that's
No,
okay.
You're good.
No, more's better. That's good.
All right, so whether an undesirable change will be produced in character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties, I would say no, you're not creating any drainage issues. You're in a residential area. Many of the houses in that neighborhood have decks. I think it'll completely fit in with the character of the neighborhood.
Mr. Rabia,
Agree.
Mr. Daniel,
Agree.
Mr. Bick,
Attached?
Oh.
Agree?
Mr. Stanton.
Never
Agree.
mind. I'm reading, never mind.
Okay.
I agree.
Detached.
Let's see, I'm sorry, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by a feasible alternative to the variance. I would say no, otherwise you're gonna end up with a very small deck in the back, no matter what. You're gonna be within that 30-foot setback, so I would say no.
Mr. Rabia,
I agree. And part of it's the shape of his house, right? His garage juts out, quite
Yeah.
a bit out in front of the home. So he's pushed a little bit back further into his property.
Mr. Daniel,
Agree. And also just noting that the applicant, as soon as he cleared the bay window, brought the deck back as well to minimize the encroachment into the variance.
Mr. Bick,
Agreed.
Mr. Stanton.
I agree, and I would also note the presence of the wetlands in the lot behind the property that we're talking about, which is likely never to be developed.
Whether the requested variance is substantial. So you're looking for a variance of just under 30%. I would say it is substantial, but not substantial enough to be a reason to deny.
Mr. Rabia,
I agree.
Mr. Daniel,
Agree.
Mr. Bick,
Agreed.
Mr. Stanton.
Agreed.
Would the variance have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood? I would say no, it is not going to create any type of stormwater runoff or situation like that where you'd be causing issues for neighbors or anything of that nature, or the wetlands behind you. So I would say no.
Mr. Rabia,
I agree.
Mr. Daniel,
Agree.
Mr. Bick,
Agreed.
Mr. Stanton.
Agreed.
Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, as Mr. Stanton was talking about earlier, almost always self-created because of the fact that you want the variance. but again, not a reason to deny.
Mr. Rabia,
I agree.
Mr. Daniel,
Agree.
Mr. Beck,
I agree.
Mr. Stanton.
I agree.
With that, I will make a motion on behalf of Peter Zook, 8504 Tender Trail, for an area variance where the proposed 24 by 15-foot deck is a rear yard setback of 21.2 feet and a minimum distance of 30 feet is required.
Do I have a second
I'll second the motion.
by Mr. Rabia?
Mr. Rabia,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Daniel,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Beck,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Mays,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. Motion carried. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to thank everybody for taking their time and reviewing this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
It's our pleasure. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, May 6th, 2024, assuming we have any cases. Oh, good, good. Is there any other business before the board? Okay, there being no other business before the board, do I have a motion to adjourn
Motion to adjourn.
by Mr. Robbie? Do I have a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Competing seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Take issue.
Aye. The ayes have it, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.